I'm Miss Roz, and today we are going to make pancakes, right? So let's check out our mise en place for me. So right now I have my frying pan, okay? And then I also have a small mixing bowl, as well as measuring cups, measuring spoons, liquid measuring cup, wire whisk, butter knife, fork, and spoon. And then for my ingredients, I have some flour, sugar, a little lemon juice, an egg, salt, baking soda, baking powder, milk, and a little canola oil. You could also use vegetable oil as well. All right, so let's get on to my mise en place of measuring. We're going to start out with the liquid ingredients this time. So the first part of the recipe tells us that we need some lemon juice and some milk, right? It tells us that we need to measure the milk to the 1 cup line. Okay, so find the 1 cup line on your measuring cup, and then pour to the measuring cup, the 1 cup, right? In your submission, you need to take a picture of this. You do not need to provide any videos to make your pancakes, but you will provide some submission. So take a picture and make sure that the line of your milk is at that 1 cup, right? And then it also tells me that I need a tablespoon of some lemon juice. Right now, the reason I'm using some lemon juice is because I am going to what we call sour my milk, right? So I'm going to add that in there and just mix it up a little, right? And so what will happen is that milk will start to get a little chunky, right? That milk is going to help with that lemon juice is going to help with the rising of your pancakes, right? And so I'm going to actually just set that aside and let it sour, all right? It will get a little thick, and that is perfectly okay, right? Now, next I have a egg, so I'm going to crack that egg on the flat surface, open it up, right? And then what I need to actually add to that egg is going to be 2 tablespoons of some canola oil. So, a little oil. 1, 2, right, and then I'm going to set that aside, and then the last thing I need to do is my dry ingredients, right? It tells me that I need 1 3/4 cup flour. Okay, now with my flour, right, this you will be taking a picture of because I want to make sure that your flour is level, right? So let's see here. Let's get me in a good picture. All right, now when you go to do this, most people would just take the cup and just scoop it out. But what actually happens is that when you go down into the flour, you actually compact it so that when you go to scoop it up, you actually probably end up with more flour than you need. So what you're going to do is take your spoon, right? I mix my flour around to kind of break it up. And then you're actually going to just spoon the flour into your cup, right? And when I do this, I want to put more than I need so that I can level it off. So first you want to spoon your flour up like so, and then you're going to take your butter knife, and then just slowly and carefully level it off, right? And try to keep the flour in your bin as much as you can. So that's 1, but then I also need 3/4 cup, which means that I need to grab my 3/4 cup, right? And then I'm going to do the same exact thing, right? So scoop my flour so that I'm not compacting it, and then use my butter knife, and then just lightly and slowly, carefully level it off. Right, so that is my flour. Right, I also need, I believe, 2 tablespoons of some sugar. Right, with the sugar, I don't need to spoon if I don't want to because it doesn't compact the way flour does. Right, so I can scoop that, but I do want to still level it. Right, so 1, and then 2. So you'll notice I actually am not putting everything into individual bowls this time, right? You can, when it's a recipe like this where everything kind of ends up all in this one bowl, sometimes I will just put all the dry ingredients in together, right? And so then I have my salt, okay, and so this says 1/4 teaspoon of salt, so I need to find my 1/4 teaspoon, right? Salt in baking is used to help flavor. It brings out, or what we call enhances the flavor in baking, so that's why a lot of times we use it. It also sometimes helps with some of the chemical reactions we have. All right, so we have baking soda and we have baking powder, right? Baking soda actually came first. It was created first. And the thing with baking soda is in order for it to be activated, you need some kind of acid, right? So in this case, we're using lemon juice, right? We made buttermilk by adding lemon juice to the milk, right? And so buttermilk in itself is very acidic. So is yogurt. So those are two kind of common acidic things that you might add into in order to activate baking soda. If you don't have lemon juice, you can use apple cider vinegar. You could also use lime juice, or you could use vinegar as well. But I do suggest using something kind of on the sweeter side since this is baking, right? So baking soda needs an acid in order to activate, right? And so we used this for quite a while, and then they came around and was like, well, why don't we add acid already so that we don't need to have a liquid acid? And so what they did was they took baking soda and added a dry acid, right? And this is how we came up with baking powder, right? And so baking powder actually doesn't need an acid because it already has it in there, right? The one thing about baking powder though is that it says a lot of times it says it's double acting, okay? And double acting means that it helps to make rise twice, right? So the first time is when you add the liquid into whatever you're making. So when we make this pancake batter, you'll notice after a little while that there'll start to be some bubbles, right? That's the first activation because of the liquid, right? The second activation is in the heat, right? And so when we add heat to it, it will then activate again with the heat. So double acting baking powder, right? So in my recipe, it tells me I need 2 teaspoons of some baking powder. Okay, so make sure that we're using the right ones. So baking powder says 2 teaspoons. Okay, as I looked at my recipe, I realized that I actually don't have baking soda, but that is the difference between baking soda and baking powder. And because I'm adding an acid to this, it's going to be even, it's going to hopefully puff up even more because of the acid, right? And then I added my salt, and the last thing I need is some sugar. Oh no, we already added sugar. I apologize. Okay, so I think I have everything. I put in my flour, my salt, my sugar, my baking powder, right? And then I have now my egg, and canola oil, and then my milk, right? So this is a picture of your mise en place with the measured out ingredients before you mix it together, right? So take a picture of this, take a picture of your individual milk line, make sure you had taken a picture of your flour leveled off, right? And now we're going to mix this all together. So now you definitely need a picture of you mixing everything together. Now I whisk my dry ingredients because I like to break up the clumps. I also like to mix it all together, make sure it's nice and incorporated, right? So, right, and then when I do this, I like to create a well in the middle. Right. And then what I'm going to do is before I add my egg, I always like to just stir it up a little, okay, and add the liquid into the well. And then my milk may be a little chunky, and that is perfectly okay. And then I'm going to add that into the well as well, in addition. All right, and then I'm just going to slowly mix this together, right? Because it's pancake batter, right, it's going to be more liquidy, All right. But what you want to do is you want to make sure that you don't over mix this. All right. When you mix flour, okay, plus a liquid, so in our case it's milk, but even with water or just egg or anything, you develop what we call the gluten, right? And then in that gluten, okay, is developed, right? The more you develop the gluten, the chewier or the tougher your baked goods end up being, right? So in pancakes, cookies, cakes, things like that, you don't really want overdeveloped gluten, right? You want it light, right? So what I'm doing is I'm just slightly mixing this. It is okay if it ends up being a little chunky, okay? Right. Notice I'm not whisking it super rigorous or vigorous, I should say, but I am mixing it just so that it comes together, right? And so this is what your pancake batter should look like, hopefully. Okay. Now, as for cooking, okay, here is my pan. Okay, somewhere between medium and medium-high heat. Right. I'm gonna let this heat up. Okay. And then so somewhere between probably 5 and 7. Right. And you're also going to need to spray your pan. Okay. The reason we spray the pan is so that it does not stick when you go to make the pancakes, right? Now, the recipe tells you to use a 1/4 cup to scoop this, so you can choose to use the 1/4 cup, okay? If you really want bigger pancakes, sometimes I'll use also the 1/3 of a cup. It just depends on how big of the pancakes you want, right? Keep in mind, the bigger the pancake, right, the longer it's going to take to cook, right? So now you can actually see you might be able to see some of the bubbles in the batter, right? That's that baking soda, I'm sorry, that baking powder working already, that first acting, okay? And then when I go to add it to the pan for to cook these pancakes, right, you're going to also need, you'll also see that there will be bubbles, right? And that's actually an indication of how you can tell whether or not your pancakes are finished, right? When I go to add this, okay, I'm going to scoop it in, right, and I'm going to just let it cook probably for about 2 minutes or so, right? And while I'm cooking, okay, you'll notice that there will be bubbles coming up through the pancake, right? And when that happens, right, that means that baking powder is working, right? However, when when it stops bursting, right? So when you start getting those bubbles, they should burst because there's that carbon dioxide from the baking powder that's creating that gas, which is helping to rise your pancakes. However, when those bubbles, right, stop popping, right, that means that the baking powder has kind of done its thing. It's kind of over, and that means that it's time to flip your pancake, right? So like I said, the bubbles will burst, okay, all throughout. Once those bubbles stop bursting and they just remain a bubble, right, that's the time you should flip your pancake. Okay, so cooking the pancake, right? So we have our pancake batter all ready to go, and I have I'm going to use the 1/3 of a cup, so I like mine just slightly bigger, right? So I'm going to spray my pan. Right, notice that mine is is a very small one. If you have a larger one, you can use that. If you can try to make more than one pancake at a time. Right, and then go ahead and put your pancake in there. Right, now, you may have a larger frying pan. That's awesome. Go ahead and use that if you can. You also may have something that looks kind of like this, which is a griddle, right? So this is kind of an electric griddle, similar to a frying pan, but it's obviously much larger and has a lot more flat space, right? So if we were in the kitchens at school, we would use a griddle so that on the griddles at school, you can make probably about 6 to 8 pancakes at a time, because making one pancake at a time is very time consuming, right? So I'm making this pancake, and what's going to happen is I'm going to wait. You will start to see little bubbles coming up through the pancakes, and hopefully, if your pancake batter is working, it should hopefully burst open those bubbles, right? And and because that means that your baking powder is working, right? However, when those bubbles stop bursting, right, and you just see little bubbles staying bubbles, right, that means it's time to flip your pancake, because it means that the baking powder kind of is done doing its job, and so then it's time to flip your pancake. Right. This will take a few minutes to cook, right? And while I'm waiting for that, I am going to clean up my station, right, which you should do. And so you can work simultaneously, meaning you can work and wait for your pancakes to cook and do things at the same time. So cleaning up is always a good thing, or at least getting all of your dishes into the sink so that they're ready to be cleaned. Right, since the only thing I really need is my batter and my scoop, right, I can just kind of start throwing stuff into the sink. Right, be sure that you are washing all of your dishes and cleaning up after yourself. Your parents should not be cleaning up after you. Okay, so I'm just going to check underneath to see, and it's a golden brown, so you want to get underneath here, and then you just want to flip your pancake, and that should be what your pancake looks like on the other side, right? And once I flip it, I'm going to just let it cook for like another minute or so, and then I should be good to go. And that should be my pancake. Okay. I hope you enjoyed learning how to make pancakes, and I'll see you here again soon.